Christine, remember when you were a kid and you thought that your career was going to be this like perfect straight line trajectory?
Oh my, yes. That is not at all what happened. It ended up being way more of a squiggle than I could have ever imagined. And I am so happy that I embraced all of the squiggles along the way.
Welcome back, everyone, to Embrace the Squiggle, the podcast for everyone whose career or life looks nothing like a straight line. And honestly, this is where all the great stuff is happening. We are Colleen.
And Christine.
And this is episode 96 with Kathy Martin. Welcome, Kathy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so excited
Thank you
to
for being
have
here.
you here today. So we always start with how we know each other. And Kathy, you and I have I think Rania works for you. And Rania and I work together at least twice in the past at different places and have, kind of made these connections. And Rania was like, you have to meet Kathy. So you and I met for lunch one day and realized we both had our intense love of Clifton Strengths.
Yes.
And as we started talking, thought, oh, you'd be a great person to have on our podcast. So welcome today.
Thank you. Rania is a great connector.
She is. She is. So I'm going to jump right in, and I want to hear, what little Kathy thought she was going to be when she grew up, because I'm guessing it's not what you do now.
Oh, definitely not what I'm doing now, and probably not anything that I imagined I would ever do. Once I got out of the I want to be a princess phase, and really I think career started to solidify in high school. And at that point, there were two things that I was really good at, sports and school. And I thought if I could put those two things together, it would make a pretty great career. So at that point, I thought I was going to run the Olympics. I figured someone had to do it, so it might as well be me.
Might as well. We actually had a guest, one of your friends, Christine, on early in the podcast, who was the head of communications for the Olympics up in Canada many moons ago. Which
for the was it the Montreal? It would have been Montreal Olympics.
Yeah. And it was a great story to hear her kind of figure out how she kind of got there, right? Kind of making all those connections.
I remember finding a book in the old Walden books. Now I'm dating myself. It was this paperback book called How to Get a Job in Sports. And that was my key resource for quite a while. Okay, I want to work somehow in the sport industry. So how do I get my way in? And I didn't actually end up working in sport directly, but that's where I thought I would go in high school.
Yeah. So you graduate high school, and did you go directly to college? Or
I did. I did.
And what did you study in college? Like, what did you think? Like, what did that phase take you towards?
I studied sport management, and that again was focused on working for the Olympics at some point. And, things happen along the way. And I really enjoyed the study of sport, and found myself gravitating a little bit more toward sports psychology, toward athletics administration, because I really enjoyed being on a college campus. And as I was graduating, it was that moment of discernment of, do I go back to school and stay in grad school? Do I try to make my way in the workforce? And I tried the workforce for a little while and decided it was time to go back to school. So I went back for my master's degree and stayed for my doctorate. And that opened up a whole new world of career opportunities for me.
So what kind of jobs did you do in between like college and going back to school that you were like, oh, not for me? Like, what were the ones that you started checking off in the like no category?
Yeah, the no category. The first one was a personal trainer. I worked at a gym, and I really enjoyed, interacting with the members and the science of it. What I didn't enjoy was that feeling that every time I met with a new client, it was the same conversation. So there wasn't enough variety in it for me at that point. I also worked in my family's business for a while, and that wasn't for me, more from a content perspective, my parents owned a print shop for 25 years, and just didn't align with where I saw myself going at the time. So, and that was in a span of about 9 months. And I was like, okay, it's time to go back to school.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you go back, and
Mhm.
what did you get your master's in and then your subsequent doctorate in?
Yeah, my master's is in athletics administration. And the goal at that point was to be a Division III director of athletics. I had some coaching experience. I again loved the idea of working in sport, working in athletics. But then I had an opportunity very unexpectedly to teach a class as a graduate student. And as someone who was always an introvert, it was quite a remarkable experience for me to get in front of a group of students and teach them what I knew, and found that I really enjoyed it. And it was that light bulb moment for me in a lot of ways of, wow, maybe I could make a career out of this. So I decided to stay and pursue my doctorate in sports psychology, which is what my master's thesis was, and I extended that research for my doctorate.
Nice. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was your thesis on? So I studied sports psychology as an undergrad, and so I worked with a bunch of PhD students. I was the teaching assistant for the sports psychology class, so I worked with
Oh,
all
that's
the
great. That's
PhD
great.
students who were like the people I wanted to be back then. Yeah.
My master's thesis was on coaching staff cohesion. So the extent to which the teamwork among your coaches influence the performance of a team.
Nice.
Coming out of my own experience as a student athlete, really, I was fascinated by how coaches molded the team. And to this day, my high school coach, I would run through a wall for. And I found that fascinating, that we would do anything for him. He worked us really hard. Our team was very successful. And I was fascinated to find out what that relationship was like.
Love it.
It is so true. It is so true. I just, on a side note, co-founded an elite cycling race team this year. I've been in the world of cycling for quite some time, executive director for a club, and I left there and I ended up co-founding a high performance team. And we grew and escalated to a level that we did not expect in a very short amount of time. And we were at a huge, like, one of the biggest crits in Canada is held here in Vancouver. And my co-founder is the race director, and so was obviously responsible for the strategy
Yep.
of our team. And our team did very well. We didn't hit the podium, but from a strategic perspective, our racers just nailed it. And he said to me after that race, he was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this." And my philosophy and my approach. And I said, "Yes." And I said, "And I believe in you. And I would never have co-founded this team if I didn't believe in you." And I said, "You do realize why we have been successful?" And he was like, he's young. He's a younger guy. And I'm more of, I think, a mentor. But I said, "You do realize that our success this year starts with us." And he kind of looked at me and I said, "If you and I did not get along and we were dysfunctional and we were not in alignment with our vision, none of what we achieved in 2025 would have happened."
Correct.
And he was like, "That's why it's so important." And I said, "Yes, yes." So as long as we stay aligned and in sync, we will continue to have success.
You're absolutely right. And what's fascinating to me, and then as a student and now as a professional, is that line of research was non-existent. I was the first person to study it. There was some just recent research done at Penn State, but it hadn't really developed much. And I ended up working with that researcher to shape what I ultimately used in my doctorate, which is I created the scale to assess it. It's that one of those things that we know it's important, but nobody studied it. And so the focus had always been on team cohesion, which is essential. It's so important. But if you don't have that model that teamwork that you want to see, then it does lead to a little bit of dysfunction among your athletes too.
Which
It's so true.
translates directly to the business world,
It
right?
does.
I constantly
It does.
talk about, right? If our
Yeah.
leaders are not cohesive, if our leaders are not modeling those behaviors that we want all of our staff to have,
Correct.
then it's never going to happen.
Well, and that's the thing that I've, really A, realized, and B, is my philosophy in terms of, he's actually working on his sports psychology degree right now. He brings that piece. How do I get the athletes on the podium, where I bring the business lens?
Right.
And it's like, we are not an open door in terms of athletes. Like, you don't just get to race for our team. And we don't do applications, but we will go have coffee. And it really is, like I say in air quotes, and a hiring process in terms of, we need to bring the right group of people together, or we will not have that success.
Right.
Exactly like a company. So
right.
I love this conversation.
And you've also identified one of the key variables too, which is role clarity. You know what your job is. He knows what his job is, and that doesn't create turf wars.
We stay in our lanes. Yeah. We absolutely stay in our lanes.
Right.
He's learning the business piece. I'm teaching him to sort of shift and look through that lens a little bit more. And in the same breath, he's like, but that's your lane. And I'm like, yes, it's my lane, but you're going to come along with me. Come along, little birdie. But yes, that has been the other thing that has been so significant, like has made such an impact. I'm actually going after this to talk to another founder of a team in the city who is struggling with a few things.
Wow.
And she's like, I need to talk to you and let you know that I've got some challenges that I'm facing and I don't know how to face them. So now I'm actually mentoring a completely different team, which brings me joy. But, it is so true. It's not just a group of people that, you can throw together in any sport and have a winning team. There's strategy behind that.
There is.
Well, and Kathy, and then you took many other winding paths than what you're doing now. On first glance, people would not see that connection, right? So talk us a little bit about kind of what you did and then what you're doing now.
Yeah, it redefined squiggle for me in a lot of ways. So I did begin my career as a teacher. I was a full-time faculty member, teaching subjects that I love, research methods and statistics. And I knew I would be an administrator. At some point, I knew I was going to make that shift. And I thought at that point it would be department chair, maybe a dean, maybe the provost eventually. But a mentor of mine sent me this job posting and said, you really should apply for this job. And I had no idea. I wrote back. I said, what is institutional research? And she said, oh, don't worry, you'll be fine. Okay. So I applied for the job. And to my surprise, I got it. And that was my shortcut into administration, which turned out to be a very defining part of my career, because I was immersed in all things higher education in a way that I never would have had the same access to had I gone that more traditional route. So a series of things happened, and I moved from institutional research into a role as executive assistant to the president, which functions as a chief of staff, and had 3 roles like that in my career. And that, I think, is the position that most shaped me as a professional, because it's all about variety. The reason I didn't like personal training was because it felt like the same thing every day. And being a chief of staff, nothing is the same every day. So I really liked the variety of it. I liked the not knowing what each day was going to bring, but an opportunity to leverage a lot of different strengths that I feel that I have. And at that point, the goal was to be a college president. And it was my goal for a very long time. And I continued to pursue it until a little over 3 years ago, when I realized it was an opportunity to make a change. Post COVID, higher education was not the same as it was before, and not that the learning experience for the students was any different, but I think it changed me in some ways as a professional, and it was an opportunity for me to think about what I really wanted, professionally, personally. Higher education is a lifestyle. It's not just a job. And
Particularly right at those higher level administrative positions, right? It is
right,
a 24/7, right?
right,
It's not a 40-hour a week job. And like you said, it's a lifestyle, right? You're expected to be at all of the sports teams and all of the plays and performances and
right. Exactly. It is. It's a lifestyle. And I had been on the board at Glenmeadow, which is a senior living community, for a couple of years, and my discernment process paralleled the decision of my predecessor to retire. And a few people in my circle reached out and said, you really should apply for that. And I'm like, what do they want with me? Like, I'm a higher ed kid. I couldn't at that point get my brain around working in an industry other than higher education. And it felt like I was continually trying to find the role in higher ed that would make me feel like I belonged.
Tell us more about belonging.
Yeah, it's interesting. Higher ed is great for an achievement oriented person, right? If you think about your experience as a student, you get the A on the paper, then the A in the class, and then you move on to the next level. And some of the very things I loved about higher ed made it challenging for me to be a professional in higher ed. And the role of a chief of staff in particular doesn't really fit as well as part of a senior leadership team as you might think. And I continued to struggle with, where did I fit? Right? Because I had been a faculty member. I enjoyed teaching. I enjoyed all of my different roles in higher ed, but I never felt like I found my spot. And that created a lot of dissonance for me as a professional, because so much of my identity and my self-worth was wrapped up in that job, in those jobs, in belonging to a community of like-minded people that felt loyal to an institution. And once I could begin to separate myself from that experience was the moment I opened myself up to, all right, what might it look like if I work for a different nonprofit?
How did you do that? Do you remember the process or the moment where you were able to create some separateness?
I don't know if it was one moment or a series of moments. One of my dear friends said to me at some point, he said, "You're going to take your hand off the burner." And that, I think, was the moment in a weird way of saying, okay, how much of this am I doing to myself? And how much of it is the conditions of the environment that I'm in? And until I could embrace the fact that, yeah, I'm doing a lot of this myself, and realize that what I had always thought would make me successful was the thing that was making me miserable.
Oh, there's our mic drop moment.
Yeah, I was the person
Yeah.
who felt like I need to be the first one in, last one out. I'm going to respond first to every email. I'm going to make myself indispensable. And I've moved away from the perfectionism that I would say haunted me early in my career. But I just wanted to be that person, that go-to person. And I thought if I could do that, then everything else would fall into place. And that's actually not a destination.
And
it's
not.
It's not.
I tried to go to that city. Yeah, perfectionism is I mean, I don't even know if I have a word for it. It is the ultimate suffering.
It is.
Perfectionism. It really is.
It is. And I still have perfectionist tendencies.
I I call myself a recovering
Very good.
perfectionist.
That's very good.
And so some days I nail it and I'm like, whew, that was a messy, messy day. And I'm okay with it. And then some days I can feel it just creeping in, and my perfectionism shows up as paralysis. I won't do, won't go, won't start. So mine shows up as procrastination.
Okay.
And so,
So
Kathy, you ended up landing right in a place that you never guessed you would be,
yeah, I
right?
did.
And
I'm
so,
now the president of a senior living community. Um, and through that discernment process, I found a lot of parallels between higher education and senior living.
oh, absolutely, right? It's like as somebody who has the kid in higher education and is watching the parents moving into senior living, it's the same thing, right? We're trying to find like the right housing, the right people, right? Did you find the right culture? Can you find the
Right,
right fit? Do you see your friends there? It's the same
right.
conversations we had with our kids around choosing colleges as I'm having with my parents around, where do you want to move eventually?
Yeah, you're precisely hitting the nail on the head, because so much of it is how do you feel when you walk into that community. And we know, Rania knows within about 5-10 minutes of meeting a prospective family whether or not they're going to move in,
Mm-hmm.
because you just have that feeling. Either it feels right or it doesn't feel right. And there are so many areas of administration that are also similar. So, in higher ed, we have admissions. Well, here we have sales and marketing. Philanthropy is philanthropy, a budget's a budget. We may talk
And
about life
truthfully, like
enrichment.
admissions really is sales and marketing, right? Let's all be
Yes,
clear in higher
Oh,
ed. What
yes.
as three higher
it
ed
is.
people, right? We're like we all
Yeah.
know
Yeah,
admissions is a sales and marketing role.
How do I turn you into gift giving?
you're right. Right,
Right. That's
right,
part two. That's the philanthropy side, right?
right.
So
So once I got my brain around it, it didn't feel as much of a leap. But what I did ultimately was, my number one strength is learner. So this was an opportunity for me to learn something new. And I'm, as my staff will tell you, I am more than confident in saying, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you help me understand? And they're
I love
very
it.
patient with me. But it was an opportunity for me to try something new. And a former boss was so critical in helping me get to the place where I could say, all right, I think I might be able to do that job. And the way he framed it for me was, when in your life have you done something for the first time?
Like all the time.
Like, all the time.
People forget.
right.
People forget that
We
piece.
do, and I brought it back right away to my first time playing the sport of field hockey, which I didn't know anything about. I showed up at the preseason, and there were people there who helped me figure it out, and that gave me a little bit of boost of confidence that, yeah, I've done big things for the first time, and it's been okay. And that's really where I started with this of, if I'm going to do it, I'm obviously going to give it my best, but it's not only me who will make it a success. It's everybody I have around me, because I can't do this job without my team.
I just had this conversation somewhat similar last week before, irrelevant, with a client. And we were talking about, as you grow in your career, you come up against, oh, I've been here before,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, this is a challenge, this is a problem to solve. I've been here before, and sometimes it can be a carbon copy, or sometimes, it unfolds slightly different.
Mhm.
But as we grow in our career, we can look back to these moments of, okay, I've been at this intersection before. this was the way that I proceeded. This was the outcome. These were the lessons learned. If I had to redo that over again, how would I do it differently? And now when you're faced at that intersection again, you've got so much more that you can draw upon. And I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, you do make a right decision in terms of the direction based on your past skills and experience. And I feel like a lot of people forget that piece too, that all of those skills and experience, the company that we work for, the university that we work for, they do not own those skills and experience.
Correct.
We individually own the skills and experience. I'm curious if you could share with our listeners just around this last position and this last squiggle that you did and how you prepared your stories to showcase how higher education could absolutely be the reason why they should hire you.
I'm a list maker. I will make lists of pros and cons and what's transferable and what's not transferable. And I would say that the search process that I went through for this position was perhaps the most thorough I've ever been through in my career. And I spent a chunk of time as an executive search consultant where I helped colleges and universities hire presidents. So this was an incredibly intensive process. And it helped me to refine some of those stories in ways that would help the search committee pull the thread forward in the same way that I had already begun to. Whether it was work that I had done around governance, speech writing, working on visibility for an organization, working on ensuring that, a president is prepared for whatever it is they're doing on a particular day. But really, I think what made a difference for the search committee was my role in strategic planning. And that ability to work with a group of people to articulate a vision and a strategy for an organization, and to not define that strategy necessarily as what do we need to do in the next 3 to 5 years, but what do we need to do in 20 years? And think as much generatively about senior living and aging as about how do we ensure that Glenmeadow is fully occupied. So they were looking for someone who would be able to do both of those things. Think about the immediate term, but also think about where do we need to be decades from now. Glenmeadow is a 140-year-old organization, and we want to be sure that we're around for another 140. So it wasn't only about, okay, help Glenmeadow get fully occupied now. It's help ensure that we will be fully occupied well into our future.
And I think as you're interviewing for roles like this, and as you're kind of positioning yourself for that, it's understanding that and knowing it, right? Yes. Often when I'm coaching folks and helping them figure out making that move, I'm saying to them, okay, so what's the point of this job, right? Like, why does this job exist? Like, not the job title, not your tasks, but really, truly what the point is. And you're right there, right? Like, the point of your job is to make sure it's around for another 140 plus years, right?
Right. And part of it too is we're here to serve our residents. So my purpose every single day is to cultivate joy. It's cultivate joy for everybody who walks in here. How we do that differs depending on the day, in many respects, but that's our purpose. And we've now expanded our thinking around joy and our thinking around redefining aging and thinking about visibility just very differently based on the people that we have on our staff and where we see our organization going. But the stories around my prior jobs and what could be transferable here, I think one of the challenges for me, and I'm not alone in this, is I looked at that job description and said, can I do all of these things? right?
Right.
With the
Such a
checklist.
woman thing to say.
And
I know, right?
probably not only can I do them, but can I do them well, right? Like
Can I do
can
them
I really
perfect?
do them, right?
Yeah.
I used to ask my boss 3 questions. Am I doing enough of the right things? No, if, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough of the right things? Am I doing enough of the right things well? And I now recognize a lot of the dysfunction in those questions, but it truly is all about, can I do all of the things? And for me to look at that list of job requirements and go, wow, if I'm not sure that I could knock the ball out of the park in each one of those things, should I apply? And it was getting over that obstacle first to say, you know what, I've got about 80% of it. I think I'm going to go
Perfect.
for it.
That's what we always recommend,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Especially at that level,
yeah,
senior level. Yeah.
because
Right.
part of it is, if go back to your sports psychology days, right? It's about the team and the coaches. It's about all the people on your team together. Can you
Right.
make this happen, right? Together, can you get all these things done? It's not always you doing every single one of those tasks.
Well, what's your line, Colleen, that I
We
just
just
showed it to the
execute
world?
through others.
Through others. I know. And
Absolutely.
every time I use that line, I attribute it to you, Colleen, just so you know, I'm not stealing it. It's looking through the lens of, and it, and I'm not going to, I shouldn't gender stereotype this because it happens across the board. It's looking through the lens of all the things that I do have and not the lens of what I don't have. And I just want to, I want to bring forward what Colleen said. We both use, different language, same guidance, and it's what business problem needs to be solved.
Mhm.
And when companies are, I guess this is just kind of a reminder to everybody out there, when companies are hiring, it is because they have a specific business problem that they need to solve, and not everybody has the skills and experience. They need to go out and find the skills and experience, and then of course there needs to be the right fit for the team and the organization. But it really comes down to, and I love that you highlighted this, Kathy, is your value is in what you said. This chapter is the strategic plan,
Right.
and making sure that this organization lives on. And I just think that piece that you shared is so brilliant, and I really want our listeners to take that away and look at their own career from that viewpoint.
Well, and I think about the board of directors as well, that, I was a very non-traditional choice for this presidency. And it's really the board's understanding of the talent of the rest of the team to say, okay, if we bring Kathy in, it's going to be okay because she can do the things. And then she's got a strong team around her that can teach her. That piece of it, I don't think we talk about enough, around, you're not only choosing the president, you're evaluating the rest of the team
Right.
ultimately.
And the importance behind knowing the strengths and gaps of the team,
Yes.
because we should never, and Colleen and I talk about this quite regularly around, we shouldn't be hiring carbon copies of ourselves or carbon copies of the team.
Right.
If the team's strength is X, Y, and Z, and the gap is this, then maybe that role fills that gap.
Mhm.
There's different ways we can slice it. But it's really around that power of knowing the strengths, and the gaps of the team, and making sure that a moment to hire is an opportunity to fill a gap.
Right. Right.
This has been great, Kathy. Thank you so
Love
much
it.
for joining
Sure.
us today. If you had that like one piece of advice that you would want to throw out to somebody who is, maybe facing this kind of big change in their career, what would it be?
I'll leave you with a quote I heard years and years ago: leap and the net will appear.
Oh, I like that one.
That, it's okay to walk through a door that you don't know where it goes. And sometimes the people around you will tap you on the shoulder and say, you ought to do this. And each time I've listened to that in my career, they've not been wrong.
I
And
love it.
and I may not have always known what was going to happen, but the net eventually appeared. And and there are support systems around you. You're never alone in the work. And
No.
I would say trust yourself, trust your gut, and use your network.
Love it.
You would have thought we would paid you to say those things. Kathy, that's brilliant. Good recruit, Colleen. I love this. You know, honestly, Kathy, what a rich conversation. I mean, we could just write a journal with just all the quotes, all the
Oh,
things that
thank
you just
you.
said in this episode. Really, you know, if there is an episode that I'm going to push out, it's going to be this one, because there, you know, you have shared a lot of wisdom, and how, I mean, careers can squiggle and you can find yourself in a position that you never thought. And I know just recently I said, I've posted on Instagram and probably said it in coaching, but clarity can come from action. You don't always have to have clarity before the action. And it's,
Precisely.
yeah, and it sounds, you know, you've said the same thing just with different words. And, you know, don't hold yourself back. Go for it. See what happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Am I bringing this one
You
home
get to
today,
bring this
Colleen?
home. I did the last one. All you.
Okay. Okay. Kathy, so just a few additional questions, because we love to, you know, of course, get to know our guests a little more on the personal side.
Sure.
We would love to know, what is the worst advice you've ever received?
Don't be the smartest person in the room.
Tell us more. How did that, I'm hearing it backfired.
Yeah, I made a comment in a meeting as a young professional, and the person I worked with asked me to stay behind and said, I'm going to give you pieces of advice. I'm the smartest person in the room. No one's funnier than me. It was the first time I remember someone really actively trying to keep me small.
Right. Yeah. Right. Don't shine. Right.
Don't shine.
shine.
Yeah.
Whew.
Oh my goodness.
I'm glad
This
you're
is
no
like
longer
a
there.
whole, oh my gosh, this is a whole other podcast episode.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on light dimming. I love that. Question number 2. What emoji do you use the most? Let's have some fun here for a second.
Oh, I use the winking eye.
Cute. I
Yeah.
love that.
I
love
have
that one.
a little streak of sarcasm, and that emoji helps to convey that I'm being sarcastic in a text.
I love it.
Yep.
Amazing. What color brings you the most joy?
I would say like a royal blue.
Beautiful. And what do you value most in others?
Candor, and authenticity.
See, you're speaking to my heart. And I didn't know this. We were going to do this today. Do you have any book recommendations, or, you know, not to take away from our own podcast, but any podcast recommendations for our listeners? Anything that's inspired or just left a real lasting impact?
Too many books to mention. So I'm an avid reader of fiction and nonfiction. And there's a book that I read recently about organizational culture. It's called The Great Engagement. And that's one that I would commend to people. I'm listening to a lot of different podcasts. I'm a huge fan of We Can Do Hard Things.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's my go-to for almost everything is go see what Abby, Glennon, and Amanda have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I've learned a lot from one of their guests. This is a totally different topic. Dr. Becky on parenting.
Yeah.
I'm not a parent, but I'm an aunt. So I'm all about Dr. Becky.
Yeah, one of theirs that made a huge difference for me or impacted me very strongly was the one with Chanel Miller.
think I heard this one.
Yeah, it's very raw, very emotional, but she has some unbelievable messages in it about strength and finding yourself and advocating for yourself.
Yeah, love it. Advocating, Colleen. I think we have to do an episode on advocating
I
because
think that would be great. That might be our
I think
next
we should-
topic.
yeah, our
ours,
one-on-one, our banter. Yeah, I think I wouldn't mind doing that one. Okay, Kathy, we could talk all day. I actually don't know where you're located. I'm assuming because you guys did coffee, you're in nearby. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, the next time I come visit,
Right.
Colleen, I'm going to be out networking. So hopefully I can fit you into my calendar of all of the fabulous Massachusetts people.
Yes, you have an open invitation to
Okay,
Glenmeadow.
thank you.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to be taking Colleen's car every day. Like, see ya. Okay. I love this conversation, Colleen. Thank you for the fabulous recruit once again. Kathy, you are an amazing powerhouse, and yeah, I just love everything about this conversation. So,
Thank you.
this episode has been brought to all of you by me, Christine Thody, coaching and consulting, offering life, career, leadership, and executive coaching, all rooted in authenticity. So please make sure to follow and subscribe and share this episode with someone else who's in the middle of their own squiggly journey. Because if no one's told you today, you're all exactly where you/we need to be. Kathy, if our listeners would like to connect with you, where can they find you? What would be the best?
Probably best to find me
place?
on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Kathy Martin on LinkedIn.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you. I will be sure to connect with you there.
Okay.
And yeah, thanks for joining us, Colleen, Kathy. Fabulous conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Is it time for you to add a little squiggle to your career? Join us every week to hear from another guest talk about how they embrace the squiggle.
Subscribe now and find your inspiration.